Have you ever wished you could become unshakable? Someone who doesn't flinch at criticism, rejection, loss, or betrayal. Maybe you've fantasized about reaching that point where silent pain stops eating you up inside while you pretend everything's fine on the outside. Perhaps you're just exhausted from trying to please everyone, keeping up an image of strength when all you really want is to rest, just for a moment, from the pressure of appearing untouchable. Let me tell you something that perhaps no one's had the guts to say before. As long as you try to avoid pain, it will keep controlling you. When you numb yourself, try to protect yourself, or hide away, you remain hostage to everything happening around you. The words that cut deep, the actions that disappoint, and the silences that kill you inside. This isn't weakness, it's reality for most people. Some just wear better masks than others. Carl Jung, one of the giants in depth psychology, said we aren't what happens to us but what we choose to become. That's where the key lies. It's not about building shields against the world or becoming cold and indifferent. It's about integration, about bringing everything that affects you in the darkness into the light. Because true strength isn't the absence of pain but complete awareness of who you are, even when you're bleeding. If you've made it this far, it's not by chance. This message is for you, the person tired of getting hurt by everything and everyone. It's for you who always feels at an emotional disadvantage, as if others have some mysterious power over you. I want to show you it doesn't have to be this way, but you'll need to face some painful truths. And maybe for the first time, this pain might actually set you free. You believe what hurts you exists outside yourself, in others' actions. Poorly chosen words, abandonments, and unexpected betrayals. But the brutal truth: none of this has power to wound unless there's already an open wound inside you. What hurts isn't what others do to you. It's what these experiences activate within you. It's the story you tell yourself. The old trauma never addressed. The emptiness you disguise with strength, pride, and that desperate need to appear well-adjusted. Jung shows us that pain we feel when facing the external world merely reflects what hasn't yet been integrated into our internal world. That's why some people endure devastating situations while maintaining clarity, while others crumble from a simple comment. It's not about what happens, it's about where it hits you. Here comes an uncomfortable truth. You still suffer because, on some level, you believe you can control how the world treats you. You're still trying to be good enough, smart enough, strong enough, understanding enough, as if that guarantees protection from pain. But control is an illusion. As long as you cling to it, you live in constant tension, trying to predict the unpredictable and avoid the inevitable. Want to stop suffering? Then stop protecting yourself from suffering. What you need isn't more control, but more awareness. As long as you believe others need to change for your pain to stop, you remain enslaved by their actions. Your freedom begins when you understand that everything from outside only has power if it finds an echo within you. And this is exactly where the true battlefield lies, the unconscious. What you don't see, don't understand, and don't master ends up mastering you. The biggest lie you've been told is that you're in control of your life. Wake up. You're not, at least not while living on autopilot, reacting without knowing why, feeling without understanding the source, making decisions you later sabotage. Jung made this clear: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. That's exactly what's happening to you right now. The pain you feel, anger that explodes from nowhere, sadness that invades without explanation. None of this is random. They're messages from forgotten, ignored, repressed parts of yourself. Jung called this territory the unconscious. It's not just a cloud of vague thoughts, but an active force, an entire system of memories, traumas, desires, and fears you don't want to face, but that continue determining what you feel and how you act. You wonder why certain words destroy you while others don't care. Because those words touch sensitive points within you that are still alive. And if they're alive, it's because you've never confronted them. You've just pushed them under the psychological rug and now you keep tripping over them. Jung said we cannot change anything until we accept it. Condemnation doesn't liberate, it oppresses. What have you been doing? Judging yourself, repressing yourself, silencing yourself, as if that would solve anything. The truth is the unconscious doesn't disappear just because you ignore it. It finds more dangerous ways to manifest in toxic relationships you repeat, patterns of self-sabotage you can't break, anxieties and fears that arise when everything seems fine. This isn't bad luck, it's your unconscious trying to wake you up, but you insist on sleeping. Want to become someone who doesn't get hurt? Then stop running from what's inside you. As long as you don't know you're unconscious, you'll remain a puppet of your emotions. And the more you protect yourself from external pain, the more vulnerable you become to internal pain. But there's a way out, not through defending yourself, but through integrating yourself. Because becoming untouchable isn't an act of resistance, it's an act of deep knowledge. Most people believe the only way to avoid getting hurt is by closing themselves off. They build walls, create masks, develop emotional armor, and pretend nothing affects them. They say, "I don't care anymore. I couldn't care less. Nothing gets to me." But inside, they continue bleeding. They keep corroding. Because the problem was never about feeling. The problem is not knowing what you're feeling and why. And this only happens to those who don't yet know themselves. Jung was precise when he stated, "Know all the theories, master all the techniques, but when touching a human soul, be just another human soul." And that human soul you insist on hiding behind a strong, invulnerable, controlled character. It's screaming to be seen. Becoming emotionally strong has nothing to do with being cold, nothing to do with ignoring pain, avoiding conflict, or pretending not to care. It has to do with integrating, with accepting, with bringing to light everything you've buried in the dark. You don't become untouchable by creating a barrier between yourself and the world. You become untouchable when you realize no one can touch what has already been embraced within you. When you integrate your shadows, fears, flaws, and insecurities, you stop reacting to everything. You observe, you choose. You're no longer an emotional puppet. And that's true freedom. Jung called this individuation, the process of becoming who you really are. Not what others expect of you. Not what you thought you should be to gain acceptance. But what emerges from within, from the meeting of light and shadow, between ego and unconscious. Individuation isn't a process of perfection, Jung said, but of integration. You don't need to become a better person. You just need to become whole. Here's the secret no one told you. The more you run from pain, the more it chases you. The more you try not to be affected, the more fragile you become. But when you face your own wounds, when you accept who you are with all that's beautiful and ugly, noble and shameful, nothing outside has the power to dismantle you. However, this path requires courage. Courage to look within. Courage to abandon the masks. Courage to feel. Because it's precisely in pain that the key to transformation is hidden. You learn to hate pain since childhood. You were taught suffering signals weakness, crying wastes time, feeling too much makes you vulnerable, so you began to run, to avoid, to deny. But the more you flee from suffering, the more it chases you, and worst of all, it changes form. It disguises itself as anxiety, anger, apathy, boredom, self-destructive impulses you don't understand. Ignored pain doesn't disappear. It just digs tunnels inside you until one day, without warning, everything collapses. Jung saw suffering differently. He believed pain was the messenger of the soul, the alarm of the unconscious, the language the self, what you are in your entirety, uses to get your attention. He said, "Depression is like a lady in black. If she appears, don't push her away. Invite her to sit down, offer her coffee, and listen to what she has to say. But you don't listen. You silence yourself. Distract yourself. Keep busy. numb yourself. You do everything to avoid looking at what really matters. What is this pain trying to show you? The truth is, suffering only hurts so much because you're still at war with yourself. There's still a part wanting to grow and another part wanting to maintain the status quo. Something inside you cries out for transformation, but your ego, accustomed to control, tries to suffocate that call. And in this friction, pain is born, because change hurts. Growth hurts. Letting go of old beliefs, cutting toxic ties, allowing what no longer serves you to die. All this is mourning, an internal process of death and rebirth. But it's precisely in this space of ruin that something new can be born. Because when everything in you gets deconstructed, when certainties crumble, when pain lays bare your vulnerability, you can finally see who you really are, without the layers of protection, without the performance, without the mask. And at that exact point, suffering becomes sacred, because it brings you to your knees before the only thing that can set you free. Jung knew this. He understood suffering isn't a failure of the system. It's part of the process. Pain isn't the end of the road. It's the beginning of the journey toward individuation. The problem is, most people give up before crossing that dark valley. They flee, distract themselves, return to the surface, but not you. If you've made it this far, you're ready to cross. Few people have the courage to begin the journey of individuation. Even fewer have the courage to complete it, because this path doesn't promise comfort, offer guarantees, or protect your ego. It destroys it. Jung referred to individuation as a process of becoming who you are. But this means, above all, unlearning what you think you are. And that hurts more than any external rejection. Because you start to realize much of what defined you until now was an illusion. You are not your achievements, not your traumas, not the image you constructed to be loved, respected, or admired. All this was what you created to survive. But surviving isn't living. And individuation is life's call beyond survival. It's when the unconscious begins pushing everything repressed, hidden, and distorted to the surface. Individuation requires dissolving the persona. Jung wrote, "For it is merely a mask of collective convenience." In other words, you'll need to tear off your own skin to discover what lies beneath. It's in this process that you begin becoming untouchable. Not because nothing affects you anymore, but because you've already gone through the fire. You've faced your monsters. You've looked into the eyes of your shame, neediness, and anger and said, "I see you, and you no longer control me." It's this internal clarity, this lucidity facing your own darkness, that gives you strength independent of approval, recognition, or control. You no longer need everyone's love. No longer need to win every argument. No longer need to appear strong, because you know who you are, and no one can take that away. True emotional armor isn't a shell, it's a core. It's integrating all your parts into a center of consciousness that remains unshaken during storms. You may feel pain, but it doesn't break you. You may get hurt, but you don't lose yourself. Because you've stopped being reactive and become whole. You've stopped living on the surface and begun inhabiting the depths. However, this depth comes at a price: loneliness. Not because you'll be alone, but because few can accompany you on this journey. Most remain trapped on the surface, in masks, in the fear of feeling. And when you begin freeing yourself, you inevitably create distance. But this distancing isn't rejection. It's maturation. You don't distance yourself out of pride. You distance yourself because you no longer fit where you once hid. Now that you've made it this far, something needs stating clearly. Nothing will shield you from external suffering if you remain unconscious of what happens within. Words will continue hurting. Rejections will continue stinging. Losses will keep bringing you down. Until you awaken, and awakening isn't a magical event. It's a daily choice. Looking within even when it hurts, taking responsibility for everything you feel without blaming others. the past, or fate anymore. Jung said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." You've spent your whole life resisting the fear of inadequacy, the emptiness of rejection, the pain of loneliness, the anguish of invisibility. But what did you do with that? You hid. Silenced yourself. Tried controlling everything. Tried being perfect. Tried being strong. And all this has brought you here, exhausted, tired of fighting against the world and yourself. But now you know. True emotional immunity isn't hardness. It's clarity. Not about creating armor, but expanding awareness. Because when you understand your triggers, patterns, and wounds, others' actions lose their destructive power. You still feel, but you don't drown. You still suffer, but you don't lose yourself. And that changes everything. What shields you isn't protection from life. It's diving into it deeply. Those living on the surface get hurt by any wave. Those who dive know there's silence, stability, and power below. And that's where you're headed. When you start living from that place of integration, presence, and acceptance, the world may try knocking you down, but it no longer finds where to hit you. If something within you has awakened, write in the comments, "I choose awareness." Let's start a movement of people who no longer want to survive by pretending to be strong, but to live with truth. Don't forget, the next video continues this journey. It's important. Keep going. Real transformation only begins when you don't stop at the first step. See you there.